In today's video, I'll be showing you guys the fastest way to solo every main boss in AUT. So this includes all 4 of the Shabuya bosses, the Gojo boss, all the One Piece bosses, including Whitebeard, Luffy, Shanks, and Law, plus Shadow, and the Denison of Hell. If you do end up enjoying today's video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and with that out the way, let's get into it. Before we get into the bosses, I wanted to go over the abilities that you should use. Just know that this is only my opinion, and it obviously doesn't matter what ability you use, but I personally think these are the best. The 4 best abilities for grinding, in my opinion, are the strongest, aka Gojo, then the King of Curses, Gear 5th, and finally, the Mercenaries. Out of that list, probably the best one to use is the Mercs. The reason for this is that they're not only super easy to obtain, but they have a special passive, which is the Heads meter. This meter can be raised by killing enemies with your H move, which I'll get into in a second, and whenever the meter raises, you gain shield, plus a higher crit chance on all your moves. So, if we were to get a bunch of heads, we would then have an almost guaranteed critical hit on each attack, buffing our damage by a ton. To actually get these heads, you'll need to kill enemies with your H move like I said, but the thing is that you'll need to first activate the move, then press H again to actually swing your sword. If you don't press H the second time, you'll only bash the enemy with your shield, and that won't increase your head counter. So here I've sped up the gameplay so you can see me farming the thugs around the city for heads. I like to group them up first and then use my sword attack. Now you want to keep on doing this until you have at least 50 heads. Of course, if you get even more heads, that means you'll get even more buffs, but I'd recommend at least 50 to stay safe. Here I have over 100 heads somehow, and I'll be showcasing how overpowered this is on both the Shanks and Luffy boss. Pretty much. This ability can cheese any boss in the game, besides Mahoraga and Whitebeard. And make sure you also have Buso Haki, as it raises your damage by a lot. Now, if I just use my sniper, you can see the insane amount of damage it does in only one shot. And we can cheese this boss by staying out of his range so he can't attack us, other than the sniper. You can also use moves like the minigun and pocket surprise, which all also deal a bunch of damage. And another thing to note, the sniper does have damage fall off, meaning if you're farther away, you'll deal less damage, at least from my knowledge. If I'm wrong, then please tell me in the comments below. But as you can see, from this distance, I'm dealing almost 10k damage with only one shot, and I haven't been hit even once. Anyways, I'll speed this up for you guys. In the end, I managed to beat Shanks in under 2 minutes using this method. With him out the way, let's move on to Luffy. This boss took a little more time than Shanks did for me, but overall it was still super easy. The only issue was that my sniper wouldn't damage him for whatever reason, until he reached his second phase. And like last time, I beat him in under 2 minutes, which just goes to show how easy it is to cheese bosses using this ability. Now, let's move on to the Shabuya bosses, starting with the Vessel. Overall, this boss is probably the easiest boss in the game to fight, or at least one of, since as long as you stay away from him, he won't attack you at all, meaning you can do all sorts of attacks without being damaged. Also, I'll be using Gojo for the rest of these Shabuya bosses, since you guys already understand how broken the Mercs are, and I wanted to switch things up a bit. When fighting with Gojo, always try to use your domain whenever you can, since the cooldown is pretty short and it's just an overpowered move. Inside, the bosses can't attack you at all, except on some rare occasions. You want to try to use as many moves as you can while inside the domain, including your hollow nuke, since once the domain ends, all your moves will go on cooldown. Anyways, I'll speed up the rest of this fight. Overall, the Vessel is a really easy boss to beat as long as you keep your distance, and the only move that actually can be a problem, I'd say, would be the one where he shoots a beam of blood from his hands. Other than that, you'll be fine. In the end, I beat the Vessel in exactly 2 minutes. And with him out the way, let's move on to the Sorcerer Killer. This boss is way harder than the Vessel, but he only really becomes a problem in his second phase. The first phase, though, is pretty easy. We'll be doing pretty much the same thing as before. Just spam domains and nukes. And of course, if you don't want to use Gojo, you can always use the Mercs and just use the sniper method that I showed before. Or you can use any other ability that you like. Now, I did actually die, during this fight, which probably shows how bad I am at the game or shows how annoying this boss is to fight. Either way, it took me a lot longer to defeat this boss using Gojo than it did with the vessel, taking me around 5 minutes to beat him. And with him out the way, let's move on to Sukuna. This boss is much harder than both the Vessel and Sorcerer Killer combined, which should be obvious. But as long as you don't let him pop his domain, the fight overall isn't too bad. But if he does get his domain off, which he probably will multiple times, then just run away, outside of the domain area so you don't take damage. This boss is somewhat RNG based, since he can use his domain as much as he wants, so really this fight being easy or hard depends on how many times he uses his domain. For me, most of the fight was just waiting outside for his domain to finish, but other than that, everything else wasn't too bad. Overall, this boss will take a little while to beat, at least if you're using Gojo like I am. For me, it took around 7 minutes for me to beat Sukuna, and I can't stress this enough. If you're really struggling, just use the sniper method from earlier. There's really only 2 bosses in the game that it won't work on, and I'll go over those in just a minute. Now let's move on to Mahoraga. This boss is regarded as one of, if not the hardest boss in the game, due to the fact that it can adapt to your moves, meaning if you use the same move on him enough, he'll fully adapt to it and it'll deal much less damage than what it normally would. This is the reason why the mercs aren't good against this boss. But on the other hand, using Gojo, at least in my opinion, is by far the best way to solo, and just in general, defeat Mahoraga. Now you will have to get used to Mahoraga's moveset, but overall his moves are pretty simple and easy to avoid. There's some pretty annoying moves, like one move where he jumps into the air and starts throwing stuff at you, and when he uses this, you want to make sure you hide behind something, or you'll take a bunch of damage. And there's another move where he just starts running at you. From what I know, you can't really avoid or escape this move. Luckily, it doesn't deal too much damage. Now, to actually fight Mahoraga using Gojo, first you want to obviously use your domain whenever you can. This is especially true when fighting Mahoraga, since when in a domain, he can't use any of his annoying attacks, and he can't heal either. Now, another very important thing. Eventually, Mahoraga will adapt to your attacks, so you want to change them whenever you can. The good thing about Gojo is that he has a ton of variations in his attacks. He has both his unawakened and awakened modes. Then there's also his 2 6-eye modes, which in total gives you 4 different modes, with 6 moves each that have their own variations. So him adapting to your moves really shouldn't be an issue. Plus, Gojo also deals a lot of true damage, which is damage that won't be affected by any modifiers, like adaptation. In total, it took me about 8 minutes to defeat Mahoraga solo. If this doesn't prove to you that Gojo isn't insane against Mahoraga, then I don't know what will. Either way, it's kind of dumb to fight Mahoraga solo in the first place, since you can always invite another person to make the fight go by way faster. Anyways, that was a bunch of talking. So let's move on to the next boss, which is Shadow. Unfortunately, the only clip I have of me fighting the Shadow boss is from a while ago, and here I'm doing it with a friend. This same thing happens with the Denizen boss. The only gameplay I have of me fighting him is from a few weeks ago, and there I'm also fighting him with a friend. But either way, I'll still commentate as if I was fighting them solo. The Shadow boss honestly isn't even that hard to fight solo. The hardest part is getting the item to spawn him. But besides that, the fight isn't too bad. If you're using Gojo, you can obviously spam domains so he can't attack you and deal damage that way. You can easily defeat him with only 1 or 2 domains, but if you are not using Gojo, you can also use the sniper method on the mercs. Or another good ability is Reaper, which is what my friend was using in this clip. Also, when he uses his I am atomic move, there's really no point in running unless you're already really low on health, since the move itself barely does any damage, and it covers so much area that most of the time, you won't be able to get away. The annoying part about this boss is the fact that he can combo you really badly. There are times where you just won't be able to escape one of his combos, plus he has a few moves with really long cutscenes. Anyways, you guys should know by now how to solo him using Gojo or the mercs, since I've already explained it like 1,000 times. And if you're using any other ability, Just be sure not to get caught in one of his combos. Overall, it took me about 2 minutes to defeat him with my friend. But if you're solo, I'd say it would take around 4 to 5 minutes. And with Shadow out the way, let's move on to Gojo. I'll be using the Mercs again for this boss. Overall, Gojo has a pretty simple moveset, at least until the second phase. As long as you stay away from him and don't get into close range, you should be fine. With the Mercs, as you can see, all I do is snipe him and shoot him with my guns outside of his range. And this same method can be applied to pretty much any ability with ranged attacks. This boss is pretty easy, and even if you're not using the Mercs, he can still be soloed without many problems. When he reaches his second phase, things become a bit harder since he'll have Infinity on for a few seconds when he first transforms, and his moves will be stronger. Either way, the same thing still applies. Just keep your distance from him and you'll be good. In the end, it took me 3 minutes to solo him using the Mercs. Now, let's move on to Whitebeard. In my opinion, this boss is one of the easiest in the game. He's considered hard mainly because he has a lot of health, only spawns every 3 real-time hours, and can't be stunned. Despite that, his moveset is simple and easy to deal with. The only move that's ever killed me is his Tsunami, but it can be avoided using Gojo's Infinity. Since Whitebeard can't be stunned, he also can't be trapped in Gojo's domain, making that ability useless against him. Still, Gojo is great for this fight, and I highly recommend using him. Other good options are Gear 5th, Reaper, and Sukuna. Another annoying move he has is his Haki, which he uses randomly. It rarely shows up, but when it does, it can cancel even uncancelable moves like the Hollow Nuke. If you're using Gojo, here are some tips. Use Hollow Purple right as Whitebeard starts standing up from his vulnerable state. This gives it time to charge and hit him as he recovers. Another thing, use the T move when he spawns his pirates. It can wipe them out and damage Whitebeard too, and make sure to always hold down the move to fully charge it. Finally, when he uses his Tsunami, activate Infinity right before it hits to negate all the damage. In the end, it took me just under 7 minutes to defeat Whitebeard using Gojo, which isn't too bad. Now with him out the way, we have 2 more bosses left, and let's finish off the One Piece bosses with Law. Here we are with Law, and to be honest, he's a tough boss. I've never really had an easy time with him, and his moveset is pretty annoying. Because of that, I recommend using someone like Gojo since his domain can stop Law from using his abilities. Now, there's honestly not much I can say about this boss. It's hard to use the sniper method against this guy since he can move pretty much anywhere around the island and attack you from any point as long as you're in his room. This is why, in my opinion, Gojo is the best option for this fight. Another good one would probably be Sukuna. Either way, I don't really know why you would want to fight this boss other than needing him for the Gear 5th quest. But besides that, he's kinda useless. In the end, it took me just about 4 minutes to defeat him. Finally, we have the Denison of Hell. Like I mentioned earlier, the only clip I have is from a while back and I'm fighting him with a friend, but I'll commentate as if it's solo. In the clip, I'm using Mercs, which is decent, but not ideal since the Denizen moves around a lot, making it hard to land precise shots like with the sniper. I recommend just sticking with Gojo, Sukuna, or Gear 5th, since these abilities are the best. The easiest way to beat him is by spamming Gojo's domain. It only takes 1 to 2 uses to finish him off. But overall, this boss is pretty difficult to solo. I wouldn't recommend inviting others to help though, since you do need the most damage in order to get drops from him. In the end, it took 4 minutes to defeat him with a friend, but if you're solo, I'd say it takes around 6 to 7 minutes. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. Hopefully I covered every useful boss, and if you guys have any of your own tips or think I left out some information, make sure to leave them down in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. So, yeah, see ya.